Well, I hope you're enjoying today's episodes. Spectacular as always, these guys. Episode 202. What will Murray do?
Woohoo. Well, what will we do? I have a stack of CDs here that I just recently acquired that I have been gifted with a massive amount of mostly jazz CDs and been picking through them. And the latest bunch I got had some real treasures in it, reminding me of stuff I used to listen to. So today we're talking about a guy who's kind of a cross between Jimi Hendrix and Ornette Coleman. And that would be, let's see if I got a good cover here for you. There we go. James Blood Ulmer, guitarist, jazz, funk, blues. He actually, I mentioned Ornette Coleman. He started playing with Ornette Coleman back in the 70s. He really got known in the early 80s as part of the downtown New York scene, where there was this weird, right around 79, 80, this weird conversion of jazz and punk. And you know, in the art scene, and include people like John Zorn, and the Contortions, and he kind of fit in with that because they're kind of taking a punk attitude towards jazz, really freeform jazz and really aggressive freeform jazz. And there's a whole art scene going on too, with people like Arto Lindsay and stuff like that. So he came out as part of that, and he did. What's the earliest CD I have here? Would be this one, which is actually recorded in '77, even though it may not have been released until later. James Blood Ulmer, called "Revealing." But really, I mean, a lot of the early stuff is pretty free-form jazz, but he's a guitarist. So he's like throwing in the electric guitar, rock and roll licks in a free-form jazz context. He also, in the early ones, got really funky. He had, because there's also, I mean, rap was just barely starting, but there was this whole funkiness of that era too that came out, and like the Talking Heads got really funky right around then. You mentioned Sandinista, the Magnificent Seven, the opening track on that album was the Clash being influenced by the New York funk scene. And James Blood Ulmer was definitely part of that. He had a really funky rhythm section, and then doing this sort of spastic, chaotic guitar riffs on top of it. Out of this whole stack, this is the one I really like. This is a live album recorded in the 90s, but it's just a trio, bass, drums, and guitar. And like I say, it gets a really funky rhythm going, and he's throwing his guitar all over the top of it. And then in the later years, like especially around the turn of the century, he moved on into doing old blues. So we have like this album, No Escape from the Blues. And it has tracks on it like Come On, Let the Good Times Roll, Bright Lights, Big City, No Escape from the Blues. The Blues had a baby and they called it rock and roll. Some like really classic blues tunes done in this, still with this really funky guitar sound on top of them, but more straightforward blues than some of the early stuff. It's another one, Birthright. And what do we got here? I Ain't Superstitious, Sitting on Top of the World, Devil's Got to Burn. Again, good classic blues done in a boom. There. Did you hear that boom? That didn't come. Yeah, that was them dumping the tree trunk in the dumpster. So if you want to hear, so I guess my point, if you want to hear some really interesting guitar works, very original, with a, like I say, a bassist and jazz, funk, and blues all mixed in together. Check out James Blood Ulmer. Really, really good stuff. That's it.
Anything from the Peanut Gallery before we conclude episode 202?
What the heck is that?
What?
Can you hear that?
No.
What?
There's some music just came onto my computer. It's really weird.
Oh.
We better
Okay.
end this episode. It's getting weird here.
Yeah.
All right,
There we
that's
go.
202 fans.